Yesterday, we discussed container storage management, container network management, and how we build custom images, which were the three main topics covered. For image storage management, we can use storage by mounting it to an image, specifying it to mount to a particular directory. We also learned about networking, namely its bridge mode, host mode, null mode, and custom mode. Yesterday, we also studied image management, and during that time, we understood that images are layered, having image layers and container layers, each layer employing copy-on-write (HCIE) technology, and how to build a custom image. In a real production environment, we are currently downloading standard images, but in a production setting, each company's needs may differ, necessitating the creation of custom images. There are two methods to create custom images. One is called Docker commit, which involves committing changes after downloading an image and modifying it, then committing these changes. However, this method is not suitable for large-scale implementation or future modifications and can be inconvenient. Also, others may not trust using these images as they don't know how they were created. So a more popular method now is to write a Dockerfile and define everything through this Dockerfile. While writing the Dockerfile, we already started this yesterday, and you can place it in any folder. It's best to name it Dockerfile, though it can be named differently. If not named Dockerfile, you need to specify this during Docker build using the T option, which stands for type, naming it, for instance, 5.0. Normally it should be written like this, but if you don't include chess, it defaults to using a file called Dockerfile, which is the main file it reads. If you don't name it Dockerfile, you specify this file with F, and then specify your current directory. It can build a new image, right? Because yesterday, we just got to this point and finished the class, so we didn't have much time at the end yesterday, so it was a bit rushed. So today we'll repeat this process. We'll take our time to explain this process, explain some principles and optimization methods for writing Dockerfile files. Yesterday we also wrote our first Dockerfile file. This may not have been very optimized. So let's give a brief introduction to some of the syntax of our Dockerfile file. Usually, our first line is written from. It's where we are from. Which mirror? Is which mirror as its base mirror? Right? As its base mirror. So we're from CentOS 7. This is the name of the mirror, actually. In this process, under its default conditions, actually, it will automatically download a CentOS 7 mirror if you didn't have it before. Actually, when you build, it will automatically download this mirror first, and then use the mirror you downloaded. Right, next is the second, is add actually, you can also add label in the middle. Label is to make a description. Make a description is a description of this author or maintainer. Is who is for to give. Who the author is an information description. So usually we will write it here. Right. Then next, we add. Add is to add a file to it, actually. We can also realize this place, add's instruction can also be changed into copy. Copy, right? Let's take a look at the difference between copy and add. Copy and add, what's different? Right here, we just mentioned run. Run is to run the instruction. For example, for instance, I need to create a directory. We need to install a software package, and so forth, right? Look, we need to download a file, create directories. We need to install some software packages. All these processes are included in run, right? All within the run command. You see, executing, like installing software, creating files, run, can be executed multiple times within the same Docker file, appear multiple times. Each execution adds a layer to the image. So we try to write all run commands in one line, though it's not necessary to only write one. If the commands are completely unrelated, it's better to keep them separate. This also makes it easier to maintain in the future, easier for future maintenance. Like if two people are involved, you have to mix them together. So a run can follow multiple commands. Separated by and means that if the previous command succeeds, then the next command will execute. And conversely, if the previous command fails, it will not continue. Meaning if any command fails, subsequent commands will not execute. So we need to make sure every command here can execute successfully. If you need to break a line, usually a backslash is used to indicate a line break. This way of writing is somewhat more aesthetically pleasing. You say, I don't add a line break. I write it all in one line. Is that okay? It is possible, like you see. Here I write everything in one line. Once this line can't fit anymore. When this line can't fit anymore, it will actually wrap automatically. You see, it's not starting a new line. I press the right arrow. It will automatically jump down. If it's starting a new line, you press the right arrow. It won't jump down, showing it's not a single line. But if it's the same line you see, like if I press the home key, it jumps to the start of the line. I press the enter key. It jumps to the end of the line, showing it's all one line. So from an expression standpoint, it's best to use line breaks. So it's clear to others, it's the same line, just too long to fit. So according to script standards, it's best to have line breaks, making it look more aesthetically pleasing. But this isn't mandatory, it's not necessary, okay? That's the run command. Next, there's another command, copy. Actually, in our example yesterday, we could use not add, but copy. We can use copy, meaning yesterday's add command, could be replaced with copy. It's also possible. What's the difference between copy and add? What's the difference? Copy is used during container build to copy files from the host to the image, right? It's about copying files from the host, right? Actually, we're copying files from the host to the image. Like you see here, it's like a host machine. If you don't specify a path, it should copy from the folder where the Dockerfile is located. That is, you see where our Dockerfile is. Our Dockerfile is in this directory. You see this file is also in this directory, effectively copying the file from the directory where the Dockerfile is located into our container, into the container. So it uses a copy. The meaning of this sentence is to copy the Docker enter point sh file located in the Dockerfile directory into the root of the container. And finally, it runs the Docker enter point.h, which is the file in the root directory, copying this file from the current directory to the root. Okay, next there's a command called add. Add is similar to the copy command. You see, it also has the copy functionality, meaning it acts just like the copy command, also copying files from the host machine to the image. So using add yesterday was also possible. But compared to copy, add can also handle standard format archives like tile.gz, tile.gz. And after copying these formats, it automatically extracts them and removes the archive from the image. If you copy a compressed archive, it will help you copy and extract it. After extraction, it will help you delete the original archive. Copy can only copy it entirely, but add has compression functionality. Like here we have an add index.tile to the current directory. You see here. So this command essentially expands a tile package. Then look here. What does it equate to doing? Copy index.tile to the current directory, then run to extract it, then delete the original tile package. Just like one add function equals these three functions, one is copy, one is run, right? Run has a tile package unpacking. One to delete the original tile package. So if dealing with compressed formats, using add is more convenient. If it's just plain files, copy is sufficient. But is it okay to use add? It's also possible That's the difference between them. Okay, that's the difference between add and copy. Okay, let's continue. Next, we have a command called workdir. What does this mean? It's our working directory. Have you noticed? Actually, when we deploy this HTTP container, during the deployment of our HTTP container, our Docker run -d 808880 name web 01 HTTP p missing a p -p enter web 01 is taken. Let's go with web 10. Okay. Next, our Docker exec-it 7bb port 80. Have you noticed? You default into this directory. See, don't you enter a directory called user locale2. It must have a statement inside called workdir. It must have a statement. Let's see how others have written it. That is, you hope that once logged in, you are immediately in that folder. Many people ask, why do I have to enter this folder as soon as I come in? In Linux systems, each user when logged in, isn't it defaulted into its home directory, right? Defaults to its home directory. Then why do we have to enter this user locale2 upon login? Because this directory is the root directory of this service. It's the root directory of Apache. Otherwise, sometimes I don't even know where Apache's root directory is. Like if I need to find something, it's not convenient. It directly takes me to the directory I need. Isn't that convenient, right? This is the directory I am in. It's the Apache services directory. So I hope when I come in, I enter the Apache directory. This is called workdir. And that's workdir. Workdir. Okay. What role does this sample source play? Didn't we just cover this yesterday? We said this sample source points to Huawei Cloud, right? Its built-in sample source points abroad, which is slower, right? So using domestic sources is faster. Okay, so this is workdir. Okay, let's take an example. Dockerfile. Today, we're also creating a folder here. You see, I have a data folder. I created a data folder. Then I wrote a workdir data by default. When containers come in, they enter the root by default. You see, PS start 042 PS. This is already typed. Docker exec-it 042. You see, am I not entering the root of this container by default? I enter the root of the container by default. Okay? Now I want it to enter a fixed directory or a specified directory. Why do we go in there? I just explained. Because I like coming here. I like it because each time I come in, it's convenient. Nginx every time comes in, it doesn't directly go in. You see, I need to know where Nginx is. And the path for Nginx is USR. I need Nginx HTML. Isn't it that each time I come in, I have to manually go there? If it defaults to here, isn't it much more convenient? That would be really handy. And etc Nginx, you see, it defaults when I come in wanting to modify Nginx's configuration to check I have to go here. So I want it to enter a specific directory. Otherwise, it enters the root. This is already at version 4.0. I just wrote this here. This is already written here. We participated in creating a data directory and workdir. Then we come here, okay, fine. We come to Docker, build, T, open S8, 5.0. Wait, I hope the next build is faster. It shouldn't be like this. I mean, wait a minute. Okay, now we should have something called Docker images. It should be 5.0 now. I am now deploying based on 5.0. Docker run, D, P200022, mapping port 22, name, my server 05. Then it's open SSH 5.0. Okay, I do Docker exec, it bin bash. You see, am I not automatically in the data directory? I am automatically in the data directory. Okay, this is called workdir, which is where my working directory is. So this is called workdir. When I log in, I am right there. Okay, so this is all written here. You see here. Of course, if the directory does not exist, you do not need to create it in advance. Workdir will automatically create it for you. What does that mean? It means if you did not define it before, in this, did not create this folder, and you specify this, it will automatically create this folder for you. Okay, this is called workter. This is quite easy to understand. Okay, moving on. Here we have an env, which is our environment variable. This can also be used multiple times within the system to set our environment variables. For example, you see we have an env here. It defines two variables. A equals 100, play equals test, location. A should be equal to 100. This should be AA equals 100. Defining variables. Defining variables. Why define variables? Why define variables? These variables are important. For instance, I want to run some commands, like nginx commands, for example. I enter nginx. Every time I need to run nginx services, it's troublesome. Let me give an example. Here is a path variable. This path variable contains many paths. My nginx today, where is it? It's under USR SBin because it should be installed via RPM package. If deployed via source package, its nginx might not be placed here by default. What to do? It might be in some non-standard directories. So there are many types of variables. Variables have many functions. I'm just giving one example here, like the path variable. Everyone knows the path variable is for running commands. That's why I can execute ls successfully, because you see our else under USR bin else. And in my system, there's a variable called path, which happens to include a path called USR bin. So when you execute ls, does it not search through all these paths by default? It searches through all these paths by default to see if the command exists in any directory. And if it does, it executes it. It executes it. That's the function of the path variable. I've talked about this concept when discussing Linux before. I've explained this concept to you all. Let's say, for example, today I'm in the data directory. I write a script called test.h and then I write a script here. Just like that, okay? Suppose this script is specifically for this task. Once it runs, it's done. This is a script. Where is this script? It's here. Now I want to be able to run this script. I could execute it like this, right? Or I could execute it like this. Was it successful? It was successful, okay? Was it successful? It was successful. Moving on, we can also come here and do this, and it would be successful. But I wish it could be successful just like that. But it's not successful this way. Why isn't it successful? Because when I try to execute this command, the system will only search in the directory specified by the path variable. It only searches these paths for the command I need. How do we solve this problem? I can do it like this. Path equals. I add to the path, including data. Data. Now you see. Now it includes data. Now can I execute it anywhere just by pressing enter? And it succeeds, right? Was it successful? Why was I able to successfully execute this command now? Because it read the values inside the path variable and searched this directory to see if the command exists. If it does, it executes successfully. I'm not sure if you understood this. I'm just giving one example here. Did you understand this way? It's about defining the path variable. Did you understand its purpose? Why we define this variable? Did you understand? I just gave an example. Many people ask why you define environment variables. I gave you an example. Isn't this the function of defining variables? With this variable, aren't your commands no longer needing absolute paths? Isn't it true that you can execute them successfully from anywhere, right? Let me explain again. Every time you execute a command, like mkdir, creating a command, executing any command. Actually, this command has a path. When you execute this command, how does the system know which command to execute? How does the system find this command? Isn't there a variable called the path variable? When you execute, you would normally execute a command like this. If every command execution is this troublesome, wouldn't it be too painful? So, wouldn't you want the command execution to be simple? How is that achieved? It's because every time a command is executed, the system goes to find the path variable, the corresponding path. Like this command is here. It actually finds it here, actually finding the command. Thus, it doesn't need the absolute path to execute successfully. Similarly, I write a command in the data directory. I also hope to achieve this functionality. Should I add data to it? Similarly, when you install some third-party applications, like I install data under OPT, for example, every time I run something from Hadoop, I install it under OPT in the Hadoop directory. It has a very long path, like HDFS in the HDFS directory. This command is here. Every time I execute it, I have to do this, which is too troublesome. So can I do it like this? OPT Hadoop HDFS bin. Next time I execute the HDFS command, can it automatically find it from here? So I don't need to type the absolute path anymore, this path variable, right? You last time sourced that admin. OpenRC.sh, it's also a variable, right? But every time you execute it, don't you have to source it? These are all variables, all kinds of environment variables in the system. Of course, I'm just picking one example. Why did we write a file last time? For OpenStack variables. Because I don't want to type the username and password every time I run an OpenStack command. Isn't it just sourcing the variables? Password, right? Isn't it just sourcing the variables? Next time I execute, aren't these variables already loaded, right? Did you understand? Everyone, did you understand? If you didn't understand, just pretend I didn't explain. I was hoping to make it clearer. Anyway, I said AA equals 100. Many people think, why set AA to 100? What's the point, right? I wanted to explain something meaningful. Isn't it about adding that OpenRC file to the environment variables? Then anywhere can, right? Yes, okay, sure, okay. Next, like I define NV here. NV is the abbreviation for environment, okay? For instance, if I set AA equal to 100 and I really insist on defining a variable, I could do it this way. But many might feel this is meaningless if I want to add a path or something later when I enter them, right? Like, you see why work data? Because there might be commands under data or something else. It doesn't matter. I'm just showing you how to define it. ABC equals CBA, 1000. It doesn't matter. Okay, Dockerfile, build T. I'm going to change something here. Okay, Docker, build T, OpenSH, 6.0. Okay, if I've built it once, I've built it once, I'll build it again. You see, this is what we're going to learn later, ENV. And then here is whatever, AA equals 200, whatever. What I'm trying to explain is, look, I'm building another 7.0, I'm building another 7.0. You see how fast it is. Isn't there no longer a software installation process? Why was there an installation before? There's no software package installation process now. It's done straight away. Okay, look, Docker, run DP, and just now name my server 07, open, 7.0, press enter. You see, Docker, execute, bin esh. Okay, echo ABC, is it there? Echo, AA, are they all there? Are these variables already effective in the background? If I set a pass variable, isn't the pass variable also effective? Isn't it working? It is working. Like with OpenStack stuff, can I write the OpenStack command directly into it? Now when I execute OpenStack, do I not have to source it every time? Isn't the OpenStack command already loaded into memory? Loaded into memory, so you don't need to source the OpenStack command every time before executing. Every time before you execute, if I write it into this Dockerfile, Isn't it by default already sourced? Can you just run it directly, right? Many people ask, why didn't you do this when you were using OpenStack? Write it directly so you don't have to source every time. Because why did I do it this way? Because in OpenStack, I often have to switch. Say I start as an admin user. Later, I have to switch to my tenants user 1. If it's written in stone, wouldn't it be inconvenient to adjust later? So, do I write an admin's openrc.sh or a user one's openrc.sh? Depending on whose identity I want to use, I just source it. I just source it temporarily. If there's no need, if I always use admin, isn't it actually just written into this file? So when it logs in, it's already loaded. I don't need to source every time. That's the reason. So when I enter the container, all the variables I defined are effective. We need to learn how to define working directories, how to define variables. Did you all understand this part? Is it okay? It's about the method of defining variables. As for what these variables are used for, it depends on different situations, different applications. They might have different requirements, but the method of definition is like this, okay? This is the method, for instance. Just to make it understandable, I talked about the path variable and confused everyone for a moment. So now I'm cautious about explaining the practical uses of these variables, where and how they're used. I won't go into that. I'll just show you how to define them. So later in your work, if you need this, you'll know how to define them. Okay, so this is called env for defining environment variables. Defining environment variables. Okay, next is the Dockerfile's expose. It's used to expose ports, called exposing ports. Like this, Dockerfile can use an expose command during container build to declare which ports the image exposes when it starts. If you need to expose multiple ports, they can be listed in succession after an expose. You can connect this. If you want to specify a port protocol, you can also attach a protocol number. If not attached, it defaults to TCP. So you see here, it defaults to TCP port 85. Look at this place. It changed the listening port N to 85. Default was 80. It changed it to port 85. From port 80 to port 85. And here it exposes port 85. When you deploy the container, when deploying the container, look here. It does not specify a port here. No port was specified during deployment, you see. It defaults to port 85, meaning if you don't add this parameter like this port 22, if you don't add this, how would others know which port you're setting up? How would they know? How would the system know you want to run an SSH service? The system isn't that smart. So Docker build topensh 8.0. You see, it was done very quickly. How many layers do we have? 5 layers, a total of 5 layers, okay? Next, you see our Docker. Run, DP, no need to specify yourself. You see, Docker PS. A, look at the last one. Is it using port 32768 to map port 22? Otherwise, how would it know to map port 22? Because in this file, did we not expose port 22? If you want to expose port 80, let me show you. Actually, this is just for the sake of exposure, but actually, it's meaningless, okay? You see, look at this sentence, isn't it? 32772, mapping 22. Here, isn't there also a 32769 mapping 80? This is IPv6, IPv6, and IPv4 both added. As long as you write it in there. When you write it, doesn't it automatically help you map port 80? In reality, I'm not listening on port 80. So when you try to access it, you actually can't reach it. That's the function of expose. Got it? Ultimately, it only makes sense if the container is really listening on port 80. That's when it truly makes sense. Otherwise, all this is just on paper. Okay, this is what expose is for. Exposing ports. Easy to understand, right? Okay, Next is, this one's pretty straightforward. Next up is volume. Volume. Many people ask me, why specify it during image build when I did it myself during container run yesterday? It's also possible here, Dockerfile can use the volume instruction during container build to mount files or directories from the container onto the host machine, which is actually what we did yesterday. Wasn't I specifying the V option during container creation? Specifying where it mounts during creation, right? Using the volume instruction to mount files and directories, right? Automatically mapped to a host machine's data directory. When the container is deleted, the data mapped out of the container is not automatically deleted. To delete it simultaneously, you need to add the V option when removing the container. See here, if you added a volume, it defaults to mounting it under a directory called data on your volume. The advantage of this is, when you delete, it's actually similar to yesterday's parameter. If the V option doesn't specify a specific path, it means this. This is just like what we discussed yesterday with that parameter. If the V doesn't connect to a specific path, that's what it means. Look, we discussed this parameter yesterday. Like this, yesterday when we specified, we had two options. One was like this. It's about specification. We mounted the OPDWIB app in this directory of the container, right? When you write here, it's the same as writing there, mounting this directory of the host machine onto this directory of the container. This was learned yesterday. And we also studied another aspect about mounting USR local 2872 STDLCS, where it wasn't specified which directory of the host machine to mount. We didn't specify. We didn't specify which host directory to mount. This place is where we specified which host directory mounts to this container directory. When you write here, you're actually writing inside the host machine. And if you do this, you haven't specified where to mount on the host, then where would it mount? It defaults to mounting to your volume, a directory. Okay, let me demonstrate. Forget it. I'll delete all these. These containers are not needed now. How to delete all containers at once. This is simple. Just list all of them and then use RMF. Do not misuse this in production environments. And then it's gone. Okay, look, multimodal, ROM, DP, 8080, colon 80, V. It should be the path of those words. It should be in USR's share of those words. Share of HTML should be this. Normally, this is how we should do it. OPT's data, am I doing this right? Mounting the host's directory onto the container's directory. If not specified, look where it's mounted at multiple ports. Number 67. Look, has it mounted it here for you? Look, has it mounted the USR's share of Nginx's HTML directory here? Do you see it? Okay, you guys try first. You guys start by writing in this container, execute IT command number 67, the USR's share of Nginx's HTML, copy the etc. password over. Look, I've copied a file inside the container. Okay, you come back here, back to this spot. Look, isn't it placed here now? The advantage of this is, when you delete the container, it won't delete this location. When you delete the container, this place isn't deleted. You come back. Look, is that file still there? You've deleted the container. Isn't this place still intact? Right. Is the file still there? If it's mounted, the read-only mode is only read-only inside the container. It's read-only inside the container. But you can write on the host machine, right? Okay? So, this volume parameter is for this. Also, once you add a volume command attached to a path, it actually means that it places this path on your host machine. The same thing. Yes, no need to modify it inside the container. You just change it on the host machine directly. Usually, we provide the service for others to use. We generally don't modify it actively. It's for others to modify. if you want to prevent them from modifying. So you make it read-only. Just when you need to modify, you just modify it on the host machine. The container can't be modified. Volume, I've mounted its data directory or some other directory. Volume, etc. is sh. This could mess up the Tesla folder. Even though it doesn't have Tesla, I'll try it. It doesn't have a Tesla folder. I'll just write it like this. Docker build t opensh 9.0. Is it 9.0 or 10.0? It's already 9.0, okay. Docker run dp. Then it's myweb02 opensh 10.0. Docker d0. Look, does it expose the target Tesla? Look, did the source mount it here? Do you see? You go inside the container, you enter the Tesla directory not deleted. It automatically creates it for you. You write in this directory. Is it the same as just now writing here? That is, it's mounted on a specific directory on the host machine. That's the idea. Okay, this is called the volume parameter. What does it mean? If the directory is read-only, like a database directory under bin 80, you can't modify the database. But if you connect from outside, can you modify it? You can modify it, right? Okay. This is called the volume parameter. What does it mean? If the directory is read-only, like a database directory under bin 80, you can't modify the database. But if you connect from outside, can you modify it? You can modify it, right? Modifications can be made from the host machine. No, it connects from outside. Even from outside, you can't modify it. What does that mean? It means if I mount it as read-only and you just connect to the database, you can't modify it. The database becomes read-only. How could you modify it? It's unmodifiable. You can't change it from anywhere. Only the administrator can make changes from the host. Once inside the container, you can't make changes. Even if you connect to the database, you're actually connecting to the container's database, and still, you can't make changes. All right, it's unmodifiable. It means I only let you view. I don't want you to modify. That's why I do it this way. Did you understand this volume parameter? Everyone. Did you understand? Did you understand the volume parameter? Can you understand it? Okay, it's like mounting a specific directory on the host machine. But this operation, I generally don't recommend writing it in the Dockerfile, directly built into the image. We usually specify it manually when running containers and don't like to write it in this container. Set it up when building the image. Generally not done this way, but there's this parameter. Let's talk about it. If the Dockerfile also defines it, and then it's specified when running the container, which has higher priority? Certainly, the runtime container has a higher priority. Try it out. Okay, like Docker run, like this. I'll create a folder called opt test, then Docker run dp. Forget the p parameter, then there's v, and then opt test, right? It's like mounting the host's opt test onto the container's test directory. Is that right? Right, opt test. Definitely, including that command later. That command is the same. Here, look here. There shouldn't be a folder with an underscore data above, right? It's gone. It should be this one. Manually specified priorities are definitely higher. It will overwrite it. Did everyone understand this? Is it okay? Can only one directory be mounted? Can only one directory be mounted? That is, can multiple directories be mounted? What do you mean? You mean our test can be mounted in two places. Mounted in two places, there's no need for that. Or you can add a v parameter, add another v parameter, like if we have other folders to mount. Is that what you mean? For example, let me give an example. Opt data. I wouldn't do that. Is that what you mean? Docker run d v opt test v d, then opt data, colon data. Is that what you mean? That is here. Look, isn't it split into 2 paragraphs now? Look, is it this? I need to mount 2 directories. That's also possible, right? Okay, right? Then it's not contradictory. Where does it finally write to then? You mean this is also test? This too is test. Then this, it should be the latter. I mean, first, we better not do this. Right? We better not do this. You say I have to do this. Let me try. I haven't tried this before. It won't work. Look, it says repeated mounts. It's not allowed. We can't do that. Okay? Just now that this should be possible. That is mount multiple at once. Mounting multiple at once is possible. Okay, fine. Let's continue. This container should still be quite fun and also convenient to test. I think about setting up a virtual machine for half a day. This is especially fast. It's done in just a few seconds. Okay. Is everything okay so far? Because we're going to get into the key points soon. We're entering the key points. A host directory can be mounted in multiple container folders. After changing one file, other containers, definitely. What does it mean? It means its meaning is the same folder. Can it be shared with multiple different containers, right? But if you change it in the host folder, do the multiple containers also change? So generally, when we mount to multiple containers, it's best to mount as read only. Otherwise, if one person changes it. In such application scenarios, when would we use this? For example, a system specifically for collecting logs, and a system specifically for analyzing logs. Could 2 people potentially share the same directory? One specifically for collecting logs would write, right? And one specifically for analyzing logs would read, right? This is possible, right? Shared. Are all these okay so far? Everyone, I will put this Dockerfile into my notes to give it a look. I've tested every function of it. Okay, all right, let's continue. Okay, next we'll enter the key points. There's a command called CMD. CMD. It's used to set the command that the image executes at startup. Let's take a look. During container construction, you can use the CMD command to set the command that the image executes at startup. That is, the command executed at startup, which means what you write here, actually, is not used during the building of the image, not used for building the image. It's used when you run through this image, the command that the image executes at startup. But the command after CMD can be overridden by the command run when starting the container. How do we understand this statement? Have you all noticed? I often like to do something called Docker run, then it, followed by OpenSSH 10.0, then bin bash. Think about it. When you actually run the container, it is going to execute a command. But at this time, am I not adding my own command? This command will override the command you write in CMD. Do you understand? In that case, will the SH service not run? It won't run? Look, I'm in, but the SH service is not running because my command overrode it. Look, Docker PS, look, my original command was this. Now has the command changed to this? I tell you, once you exit, is it over here? Is your task over? Because you did not run this command, it wasn't overridden. But you ran this command and this command exited. Is it over then? Is it over? Got it? So the point here is it can be overridden by the parameter you add after the execution command. Just you adding a parameter yourself. When you run it, you add a parameter, it will override the command. It will override the command. Similarly, if there are multiple commands in a Dockerfile, in the build mechanism, it won't throw an error, but the container runs only the last one. So what do I do if I need to run multiple commands? What if I need to run multiple commands? Then you need to write multiple commands inside your command, the commands you need to run. If you write one line here and another line here, it will only run the one below, not the one above. That's how it is. Okay, this is our command instruction. So I often tell everyone, this command instruction, if you are running a service, you usually need to add something at the end. You usually add something at the end. Okay, let me show you. We run HTTP, Docker run, DP, name myweb11, HTTP, Docker, PSA. Do you see? Isn't it running the last command at the end when the container runs? Where is that thing then? Inside the container, try to find it. Where is it? It has no command path. This path should be under the root. Under the root. Eh? Not under the root. In the current directory. In your local Apache tool. Hey. It's not there. Where is this command? HTTP. I'm here. USR local bin. Eh? Have you noticed? There are two issues. First, why can it run without adding an absolute path here? It can run without an absolute path. It's because the path variable here should contain. Look, USR, just local bin. It's in here, isn't it? Just like when I run the container. Am I running this command? And this command is here. So, doesn't it need the absolute path? Right? Okay, I enter USR local R bin. I open this file, eh? Can't open it with this. Look, it writes all this gibberish. Ultimately, did it execute this command? Eh? Ultimately, it just executed this command. Exec, it wrote a script. That's all. Okay, next. I'll teach you how to write scripts. Like, if you want your service to also be monitored, how do you write it? How do you write it? Yesterday, didn't I write one called SSHD, right? That D is for running in the background. Like I want this container to run as if it were a service. It must have something running in the background. Then, if today I want to write an HTTP source, what do I do? How about a source? What to do? Look, let me build HTTPD. It's all the same. So here, the package should be changed to here. Here it should be changed to HTTPD. We don't need this anymore. Actually, this line can also be removed. This should be. This line isn't needed either. The most crucial thing is, how do I know what to write in the next line? Right? How do I know what to write in the next line? What to write? Okay. Now I'll teach you a method. How to write it. I'm here. I'll just pick another machine. I'll also install HTTP. Usually, where is its script? When you start this service, it actually reads a script called USR lib system. Previously, when I taught CA courses, we often taught you how to write this file. Just take any. If there's a command you want to run, I can definitely make it into a service. I can make it into a service that runs. I should have HTTP service in here. Okay. It should contain HTTP service. Isn't it how you start the service each time? Isn't this how you start it? Where is this thing then? Is this how it started? This thing should be here. Usually in this directory. There's an HTTP service. You open it. Everything else is description. All about this server's just some. What's it called? It's just a control statement. For instance, when you make some judgments or something, the most crucial sentence is, what's this? What is this sentence? Inside this sentence, it uses something like this. Actually, you don't need this. You don't need this option either. It's just a variable. It actually depends on this. Is HTTP supposed to run in the background? Just this. So next, you here should write it like this here. Write it the same way. It should be like this. You don't need this either. No problem. Add spaces on both sides of the colon. It should be like this. Hit the colon here, then refresh here. It should be like this, right? That's correct. Okay, save. Next, Docker build. T, HTTP. This shouldn't conflict with that one. Fame Sky 8.0 version 1.0. F, now you need. F, is it this? Okay, we Docker images. There should be one now. Okay, let's try it. Docker run DP. Name myweb12 HTTPD. Famed Sky EDO version 1.0. Docker PS A. Look, this container is running, right? It's running here, right? 32776.192.168. 2.57, 32776. This page isn't written out like this. Isn't this the page coming up? Isn't this that page? The default HTTP page is right here. If you go in, Docker PS, a Docker exec, hit C6C. Yes, C6C. It should be in, etc. HTTP. No. In var www HTML, it's not there by default. Right, then you come here. Is this it? Successfully set up an image. Is it convenient? I teach you this method. Is it simple? Next time, you definitely won't know how to write a service, you see. Take someone else's essence, modify it a bit, and it's done, right? Understood, everyone? You got it, right? It's simple. The method I teach is simple. I usually don't teach this trick to others. Many people often ask how to write this. Us folks in the service industry, I know how that service is written, right? So I teach you the simplest method, how to get this thing done. Many people say, how do you know it's this? I don't know. But I checked how the standard is done, then I know how to write it. Is that possible? That's really cool. Why not put this in the run command? Which run? Use run to run is used when building the image, while this is for when running the container. Understand? If you write a run here, it runs during the build. It's useless. You use it at the moment of building. It's no use. You need it when running the container at that moment. I think this question was asked very well. Right. Why? I wonder if they would have this doubt. Why this command is used instead of using run? Why is it command followed by this instead of run? Does anyone know? This why the question asked just now was very good. Why? Why is it command and not run? Why does anyone else know? Right. Yes. Run is used during the build of the image usage, while CMD is used during running the container. You would definitely want this service. Running it during the build doesn't make sense. It should be useful when running the container, right? Right, run is only used during the image build, right? Command is used when running the container. And what we need is for it to be used when running the container. Whether it can run during the build is irrelevant because the image once built becomes a static thing. It doesn't run, right? I start a service during the build. You start a service during the build. What do you start a service for at that instant of building? Do you need it then? Do you need that service during the build? You don't. You need this service when running the container. Think about it. Right? Starting a service during the build makes no sense. That's really good. You run the container, and then it's like having no physical support. Just like adding an auto start command in the system. If you don't actually install the system still won't start on its own. Right? So this about the build, someone said, then later when running the container, it can just be used directly. It can be used directly. Isn't that good? Isn't that nice? When building the container, someone starts it running. How to say this? How to explain? That just adds another layer. It adds another layer. Not really another layer. Even if you do that, it's useless. Even if you write a run there, it's still useless. Processes are dynamically built. We need them at the moment the container runs. Only then does it make sense to run them, not just having run them beforehand. How can you have them run well? What does it mean? It's like saying, today, after you are born, you need to exercise. Why didn't you exercise well while you were still in your mother's womb? That exercise would be useless, right? Isn't it that you need to exercise after you are born, not while you are still in your mother's womb, not getting trained inside your mother's womb during pregnancy? Is this analogy appropriate? I don't know if it's appropriate. You think about it yourself. How do I explain this to make it clear? This has nothing to do with whether there is an extra layer or not. It doesn't matter if there is an extra layer. Some people say they don't care about this. Add another layer, so what? That's not how it works. You write a run there. You definitely won't get the service to start. So I just taught everyone how to use commands like command to run our services. And this command must be there. If it's not, once you run the container, isn't it going to just stop? Because it has nothing to do. You need to keep the container busy. Otherwise, it just ends up idle. The container exists to perform tasks. Otherwise, it stops having anything to do. Okay, all right, this is called command. This is called command. I just passed that. It is executed when the container runs. During runtime. Okay, moving on. Where can we check the start CMD for each service? Didn't I just teach everyone how to check? Didn't we check just now? You're here, aren't you supposed to check? Do you want to start this? Is it not? Actually, isn't it strictly this? Where is this? USR lib under system. Isn't it here? There must be a file like this. Isn't it found from here? You just need to pay attention to this line. This line. What if it's Ubuntu? Then Ubuntu definitely has a similar file. Ubuntu has it. Ways to start services. It will definitely be like this, similar to this. Anyone using system to manage is the same. Okay, next, we have something called entry point. What is it for? During container build in Docker. You can also use the entry point directive to set the commands to be executed. When the image starts, it's similar to command. It's similar to command, also used to set the commands executed at image startup. But it differs from command in that the commands executed will not be overridden. The commands executed will not be overridden. What does that mean? It means the command's instructions will be overridden by the user added instructions during execution. But entry point will not be. It will be overridden. But entry point won't be. It's usually a script used at container startup to execute some initial configurations. Actually, I prefer using this entry point, which is followed by a script. What are you going to do? You just write all that stuff inside a script, right? Entry point and system can coexist. The content in system will serve as parameters and options for entry point. Generally speaking, choosing one is enough. Okay, like this. If I say today I just want to go wild, I want a container with 2 services. Generally, it's not done. Why would a container have 2 services? Aren't containers meant for lightweight isolation? If one container runs 2 services, isn't that against isolation? Aren't our containers supposed to be lightweight? Wouldn't I want it to be simpler? Wouldn't put Vamo and my server in one container? That would be crazy. What are you doing putting them in one container? Okay, right. Then if I just want to do this thing, I just want to, at this time, you might try, for instance, I want to turn on the SSH service. Then here, I should write a script. What kind of script? Write a script. This script, if it doesn't have bin, bash, it ends. Then put that script inside. That is USR, spin, shape, D. Then add that previous one. Write this. This can't be done like this. You have to copy that file in. Service. Change. You still need to add a line. Try it out and see if it works. In this place, you should also add something. Is it like this? Add one, right? If I previously built 2.0 and build 2.0 again, what will happen? Look, if it was already built before, what happens now if I name it 2.0 again? Your previous 2.0 has now turned into this, right? Your previous 2.0 has now changed to this. It's unusable. It's been overwritten. So, let's try it now. See if it works. Docker run dp, name my server 100 HTTP Soho execution failed. He says in this it's written wrong. He didn't write it in the parts editor. He wrote the name wrong. It's called service. He wrote it wrong. It should be like this. He wrote it wrong. This is it. S1 VS1 wrote it wrong. No need to rebuild. Need to build 3.0 then. Look, he's running this now. Look, is it okay now? SSH is running. You can SSH into 192.168.57, 3.2.7.8.0. It shouldn't be like this. Can it connect? I just don't know his password now. Haven't gone in to change the password. His port 80 should also be listening. His port should be 3.2.7.7.9. It's not 3.2.7.7.9. 3.2.7.7.9, right? It's not listening. It's exposed then. Installed. Let's see. It should already be running. This is because his service starts a bit slow. It's already running. It's already running in the background. Let me try. It's working now. But I had to manually run it just now. I didn't manually run it before. It didn't run this process when I entered. Let me check again. If I manually run it, it works, Why do I have to manually run it? Let me see. Why do I have to manually run it? Put it in the background, Let's try. Expose the port. I'm thinking 4.0. Docker run. DP, Docker name my web. 6.6. HTTP. How did it end? This didn't run well. You see it ended. This program ended. Where did I write it wrong? Let me check. There shouldn't be any mistakes. There were no mistakes just now. It's because you can't write it like this inside. I'll try it myself. I'll run this program. Let's see if there are any problems. It should be fine. It should be able to run. It should be running. Maybe it still can't be thrown into the background to run. Indeed. A service shouldn't be thrown into the background to run. This. Let's try again. Okay, let's go again. Docker run. DP. Name my web 66. This time it should work. It should be running. Let me check. I'm going in here. Docker exec. It's 0f. It's still that service didn't run. It's still the same as before. The one in the back didn't run. The one in the front ran. Why didn't the one in the back run? Let me try. Could it be 2 entry points? Why didn't it execute successfully? The first part executed, but the second part didn't. Strange. The front one ended up executing, but the back one wasn't executed. So, let's switch sides and see if that's the issue. Or say I just add this one alone and see if it works. See if adding just one will work. Let's see if it passes. I'm just adding one. Let's see how 2 pings together are handled. Or is it that this HTTP can't be written like this? But when I run it manually, it works. Okay, let's try again. Okay, Let's go again. It should be 6.0. This works too. Look. 32786. 32786, right? 327. No, not this one. It's the one after. 32785. 786 is 22. 785. You see, it's possible. It is possible. What's the issue? This one works, but the second one doesn't. Only one service can run. It's really like that. One container can only run one service. Running two services doesn't work. This method has no problem adding a script in the back, but the intention is to make it run two. The first uses endpoint, the second service uses CMD call. That's a problem. Try it. Like this, add which one inside the SSH service. Put it in the back, put it behind the service. It didn't work just now. Oh, you are adding another line below. Right, isn't it said that the second service uses CMD call? CMD is another one. It's written like this. Just like you hear here. USR spin SD, D. Is it written like this? Isn't one an entrepreneur and one CMD? Let's try it. Everyone is now very proficient at this. Various small spaces. Okay, let's try. There's a version 7.0. Why does it seem like there's no response? Let's check it. It was written 7.0. Docker run cmd.p. Is SSH not running? SSH is running here. Damn it. There's a problem here. Look, it ran for me, and it executed this. This came to execute it. It can't be. It seems they are calling each other. It's like CMD is its variable. This can't be done. This can't be done. It can't be. This should be. You see, it's like I use bin bash to execute this script. But this script came to execute this script again. It can't be like this. So SSD in the end still didn't run. You can't write like this. There should be none because that HTTP service is running. Right? HTTP is running. You can't write it like this. If these two must appear, it should be related to this script. Only then, that and this script are related. And this script came to run it. These two are unrelated. These two, unless they are related, can be used. I hope it runs two services. How to do it? To run two services. The entry point should be not allowed to appear multiple times. Like this. You just rename service to HTTPDS service. Then rename it to SHD service. HTTP is like this. Like this. It's like inside, this is it calling multiple files, SHD. It's like this, right? Let's see if multiple entry points work. Run multiple ports P. Then just now my web. Then it seems it can only run the last one. It can only have one. With two, it can only run the last one. The first one didn't run. The first one is like this. Look, I wrote two lines. This one didn't run, only this one ran. It's the same. It can't be. It doesn't work, even if it's written in a script. Written in a script, one still didn't run. Strange. Why can't it run two services? It can only run one service. Normally, it should only run one service. It can't run two services. Even when I wrote it in one file, it couldn't run. I wrote two lines, and it didn't run either. It should only run one service. It's like that command. It only ran one command. Just like you write in the script and write in the command are the same. It only executed one command. This probably won't work. What you hope for is you hope it's this comma, like this, like this, like this. Let's try. Let's see if this works. Normally in work, we don't do this. But if you really want to test it, we are trying to test this feature now, right? Okay, let's do it again. 9.0. Did both run? Let's try. Did SS run? This HTTP. HTTP definitely ran. But did SSH run? It's the same. SSH 192.168 2.57 P32792. No, still not working. It seems like it's using that SSH. Is it running it? And it runs it, right? It's not executing the two commands separately.